Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm bringing you the next chapter in the story of Hoai Ca, a resilient woman who has always devoted herself to her family, to Hung, and to their little son, Tony. But in this episode, an unexpected twist unfolds. After months away from home due to his work, Hung begins to develop feelings for another woman, a new teacher who has just been assigned to the remote mountain area where he is stationed. It all started innocently, working together, helping the villagers learn to read and write, encouraging children to come to school. Yet over time, the exchanged glances, small acts of care, and late-night conversations slowly stirred something in the heart of the man who once thought himself steadfast. Meanwhile, back in their hometown, Hoai Ca continues her quiet routine, waking up early to cook for her mother Ha, taking little Tony to school, and waiting for news from her husband through the misty rain of lonely afternoons. She still holds on to the promise he once made. When things settle down, I'll bring you and our son to the new home, with a garden, a fish pond, and peace. But what she doesn't know is that far away, another heart is finding its way into Hung's life. Will Hung stay true to himself? Will Hoai Ca's love and sacrifice be enough to hold on to the man she loves? Or is this the beginning of a quiet storm brewing beneath their seemingly peaceful marriage? Stay tuned until the end of today's video to see how this emotional story unfolds. And don't forget to leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Is Hung wrong for letting his feelings cross the line? That noon, the sunlight poured down like honey onto the old tiled roof. The heat rising from the brickyard shimmered in the golden haze, making the whole space seem to waver. Hoai Ca stood silently on the porch, one hand shielding her eyes as she gazed toward the faraway fields, where white storks glided gracefully through the breeze, carrying the faint scent of freshly cut straw. The cicadas' buzzing blended with the whisper of wind rustling through the areca palms by the gate, weaving together the familiar melody of a countryside summer afternoon. In her hand, the old phone lit up. A message from Hung appeared clearly on the screen. I've bought a large piece of land near my workplace. I want to build a beautiful house for you, with a fish pond, a vegetable garden, and a gourd trellis. There, we'll start a new life together. Those seemingly simple lines made her heart sink a little. Hoai Ca read them over and over, lips pressed tight. Part of her wanted to smile, to feel grateful for the simple happiness of being remembered, of being loved. But another part grew heavy. She knew that to go there meant leaving behind everything: her mother, the garden, the old house, her father's grave, and all the memories bound to every breath of this land. Her fingers trembled as she typed. My dear, thank you. But I'll stay. My mother is here, my father's grave is here, and there are things I simply cannot leave behind. She stared at the message for a long while, then took a deep breath before pressing send. When the words, "message sent," appeared, her heart ached, as if she had just cut away something deeply precious that could never be put into words. She knew that somewhere far away, Hung would be sad. But she also knew that if she left, she would lose her roots, and the very place that had sheltered her through hardship. Across the yard, the clucking of hens called their chicks. Mother Ha was bending down, watering the vegetable rows, her voice soft and familiar. Ca, bring me another bucket of water from the well. I need to finish this bed of scallions. Startled, Hoai Ca quickly slipped her phone into her shirt pocket and hurried to fetch the water. The clear drop sparkled in the sunlight as she carried the bucket back. Little Tony sat in the middle of the yard, his hands covered in dirt, babbling happily. Mommy, look! I'm making mud cakes. She smiled, wiping the sweat from her forehead. Looking at her son, her heart suddenly calmed. That simple, peaceful moment, so humble, yet so warm, made her all the more unwilling to leave. Evening slowly descended. The last rays of sunlight stretched through the line of areca palms, casting golden streaks across the young woman's face. Birds called to one another as they returned to their nests, the hammock creaked gently in the wind. Hoai Ca sat by the porch, her eyes distant, letting her thoughts drift with the colors of dusk that softly cloaked the old roof of her home. Over 130 kilometers away, deep in the mountain district, Hung was staying at the commune office. The red dirt road twisted endlessly, winding through forests of acacia and hills covered in tall reeds. In the early morning, mist blanketed the path, cold air seeping into his collar. From afar came the crow of roosters, mingling with the gentle murmur of a stream flowing at the foot of the hill, signaling the start of another day. Hung was an officer in charge of the Literacy and Education for All program. Every day, he visited each remote village, knocking on doors, persuading families to send their children to school. At night, he sat at his old wooden desk, preparing lessons and writing reports under the dim yellow light of a flickering bulb. His small rented room, with walls stained by age and peeling lime, contained little more than a desk, a few clothes hanging from a string, and a framed photo of Hoai Ca and Tony, carefully placed on the bedside table. Each night before sleeping, he would look at that photo for a long time, as if to gather a bit of warmth from home to ease the loneliness that filled this remote place. During his first week on duty, the school welcomed a new teacher, Mai, recently assigned from the provincial center. She was young, gentle, soft-spoken, and her smile carried a quiet warmth. Her long hair was neatly tied back, her figure small but quick and graceful. From the day she arrived, the once silent meeting room seemed a little brighter, filled now with laughter and light conversations during short breaks. They first met at a training session early that week. While Hung was bent over, trying to fix a speaker with a broken wire, Mai approached softly and said, "Let me help you. It must be tiring doing that all by yourself." Her voice was light as the breeze, carrying a faint scent of orange blossom. He looked up, smiled, and simply nodded. From that day on, they often worked together, attending village meetings, teaching evening classes, visiting households to encourage children to return to school. On muddy roads after the rain, or during cold mountain afternoons, her presence beside him made the work feel less heavy. Many times, when they stopped by the stream to rest, Mai would pour him a cup of water and smile kindly. "Life here is hard, but it's peaceful, isn't it? The children are so sweet." Hung replied briefly, "Yeah, tough, but worth it." Yet when she looked at him with those clear, gentle eyes, he couldn't help but feel a strange unease in his chest. Their shared work naturally drew them closer. Mai often brought him lunch in a small box, sometimes a cup of hot ginger tea, and on other days, just a few ripe oranges she had picked from the garden behind the school. "Drink this, it'll keep you warm. People get sick easily up here," she would say softly, her tone laced with care. He would take it with a polite smile, trying to remain calm, yet inside, there was a feeling he couldn't quite name. At first, he thought she was simply kind, a good colleague. But as their eyes met more often, as small gestures of concern repeated, as her quiet presence filled the spaces between their words, he began to sense that something within him was quietly changing. Whenever Mai smiled, the afternoon sunlight brushed across her face, and he would suddenly think of Hoai Ca. Yet Mai's smile was somehow different, younger, softer, like a breeze gliding over the hills, leaving his heart slightly unsteady. And sometimes, in that silence, Hung found himself afraid to think too deeply, choosing instead to lower his head and keep writing. But the more he tried to avoid it, the more he realized, the gentle care of that woman had already begun to slip quietly into the empty corners of his heart, without him even noticing. That night, the rain fell in torrents. Heavy drops drummed on the tin roof, echoing like a mournful, endless song. The whole valley was shrouded in mist and moisture, and the faint light from the classroom barely illuminated the silhouettes of two people standing together under the small porch. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and old wood, cold enough to pierce the bones. Hung was tidying up the desks, stacking the students' notebooks still damp and smudged from the rain blowing through the windows. As he bent down, a familiar voice spoke softly behind him. "You forgot your coat. Put it on before you catch a cold." He turned around. It was Mai. She stood there holding a pale purple raincoat, her hair wet and clinging to her cheeks, droplets sliding down her face and neck. The dim yellow light made her look fragile, almost unreal. He smiled faintly, his voice low and rough. "Thanks, but I'm used to it. It rains all the time up here." Mai said nothing. She just looked at him, eyes deep and sad, as if wanting to speak but afraid to. Outside, the rain poured harder, wind howling through the cracks of the wooden walls. The silence between them thickened, broken only by the sound of a heart beating faster and faster. After a moment, Mai spoke again, her voice trembling as if she feared her own words. "On Hung. I know you have a wife and child back home. But sometimes, when I see how hard you work alone, I can't help but feel sorry for you." Her words dropped into the still air like a raindrop falling onto a calm lake, sending ripples that spread endlessly. Hung froze, eyes fixed on her, unable to respond. The weak light reflected on Mai's flushed face, her lips quivering. The rain kept hammering on the roof, mingling with the wailing wind over the hills, wrapping the moment in unbearable tension. "Mai, don't say that. I care about you, but please, don't make things harder for either of us." His voice was low, heavy with strain. He said the words, yet confusion flickered in his eyes. Caught between reason and emotion, he stood trapped in a gray, wordless space. Mai bit her lip, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I don't want to ruin anything. I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I know you're a good man, and I admire that." She lowered her gaze, placed the raincoat on the table, and turned away quickly. Her figure faded into the curtain of rain, leaving behind the scent of wet leaves, damp soil, and an aching emptiness. Hung stayed there for a long time. The rain only grew heavier, enveloping the small room. On the desk, the photo of Hoai Ca and Tony leaned slightly under the flickering light, their gentle smiles shining faintly through the gloom. He reached out, brushing his fingers against the glass, and his chest tightened. Images of Hoai Ca filled his mind, her tied black hair, her soft smile, the gourd trellis in front of the porch, and Tony's tiny voice calling, "Ba," in the warm afternoon sun. His throat burned. He picked up his phone, his fingers trembling as he typed a few words, then deleted them. The screen glowed in the darkness, reflecting the exhaustion in his eyes. The message was never sent. But his heart was already torn apart. Outside, the rain kept falling without pause. As if the sky itself was pouring out all the things he could never bring himself to say. That night, the air was strangely cold. Winds swept down from the mountains, carrying damp mist that slipped through the cracks in the wooden walls, whistling sharply in the stillness. Outside, the rain kept falling steadily, heavy drops tapping wearily on the tin roof. The small room was bathed in dim yellow light from a desk lamp, casting Hung's long shadow across the moldy wall. He opened his laptop, trying to finish the unfinished report. But the words on the screen blurred, melting into the streaks of rain sliding down the window. He stopped, sighed, and rubbed his temples. It wasn't fatigue, it was confusion. His mind was tangled, so lost he no longer knew where to draw the line. The sound of rain mixed with the chirping of insects outside the porch, occasionally joined by the distant barking of a dog. The quiet was so deep that even the faint tap of his pen against the desk echoed clearly. On the bedside table, the photo of Hoai Ca and Tony remained where it had always been, the one he had brought with him since leaving home. In the picture, Hoai Ca smiled softly, Tony nestled close to her, his face bright and innocent. Their eyes, gazing through the glass, seemed to look straight at him, gentle, yet piercing to the heart. Hung reached out and placed his hand on the wooden frame, his fingers brushing along its worn edge. He stared at it for a long while, then whispered to himself. "You know what you're doing, don't you, Hung?" His voice was so low only he could hear it, yet in the silent room, it sounded like a confession. A long stillness followed. The lamp flickered slightly, reflecting in his eyes, tired, heavy, full of remorse. He thought back to the morning when Hoai Ca had messaged him her decision. Her words were simple, yet filled with quiet strength. "I'll stay. My mother is here, my father's grave is here, there are things I can't leave behind." He had stared out the window for a long time that day, watching white clouds drift lazily over the distant hills. Now, in the stillness of midnight, he finally understood what those words meant. He realized, some promises aren't about building a house, but about keeping your heart steady. Staying true even when miles apart. Even when loneliness whispers temptations into your soul. That is what a true home is. Not a place, but the anchor of a heart that remains faithful no matter the distance. He closed the laptop, leaned back in the chair, and gazed at the rain-speckled window. Outside, the night stretched endlessly. The rain no longer sounded harsh, it fell softly now, like a quiet reminder of a wife, a child, and a love waiting for him to protect. At the far end of this long, lonely road, distance doesn't only test how far our feet can go. It also tests the hearts of the one who leaves and the one who stays. Some roads seem to span only a few hundred kilometers. Yet in truth, they stretch across an entire lifetime of faith and trust. When temptation comes, no one truly knows whether their heart is strong enough to stay steadfast. Amid the vast wilderness, when the mist covers every path, and the rain falls endlessly through the long, lonely nights, Hung is facing the hardest challenge of his life. Not the reports, not the teaching, not the heavy work, but himself, and the loyalty of a heart torn between longing and solitude. There are nights when the sound of rain blends with the wind's howl, making one feel so small, so fragile. In that fragile silence, the human heart wavers easily, like an oil lamp flickering before the storm. Sometimes, just a caring glance, a gentle word, is enough to make a heartbeat stumble. And the line between right and wrong becomes thinner than ever. Through the endless nights of rain, as loneliness seeps into every breath, will Hung keep his old promise to Hoai Ca? The promise of a home, of love, and of faithfulness? Or will he falter in a moment of weakness, losing the most precious things in his life? His gentle wife and the little boy who waits for him day after day? In life, there are often no villains or saints. Only hearts being tested by distance and loneliness. And sometimes, a single wrong choice can shatter an entire dream of peace. The answer will come in the next episode. Stay with me to see what this man's heart will choose. His family, or a fleeting emotion amid the mountains and mist. Will love be strong enough to bring him home? Or will the cold winds of the highlands carry everything away?
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người câu chuyện của mẹ đơn thân Hoai Ca và cảnh sát hầu như mọi người.
Trong tập hôm nay thì như mọi người cũng đã biết thì Hùng đã quay về cơ quan làm việc sau chuỗi ngày dài nghỉ phép đấy. Thì khi đến cơ quan thì bữa nay có một cái vấn đề nan giải, đó là một trong những cô giáo mới chuyển về đây để làm cùng với Hùng. Cô giáo ấy tên là Mai, ý là Hùng thì đang cố gắng hỗ trợ người dân để xóa mù chữ, còn cô giáo này thì về đây để dạy chữ cho học sinh ở vùng nghèo này. Thì cô gái này thì đã nảy sinh tình cảm với Hùng. Tuy nhiên Hùng thì anh vẫn đang giữ lý trí, vì anh biết còn Hoai Ca và Tony đang đợi anh ở nhà và anh đang cố từ chối, nhưng con tim của anh thì cũng đã dao động. Vậy thì liệu mọi chuyện tiếp theo sẽ như thế nào? Hùng sẽ lựa chọn Hoai Ca và gia đình hay là sẽ lựa chọn ra sao? Mời mọi người đón xem ở tập sau nha.